This is Big Hot Hands Industries, sponsor today of Knitting the Stash, a podcast about yarn, knitting, and other things woolly. This is episode number...
We don't know.
You don't know the episode.
We didn't look.
It's gotten up in there, 150,
I'm very unprepared
60.
today, except for getting the new shirt at the request of one of the viewers.
Thank you, viewer.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And so did everyone at the grocery store this morning.
It's just appropriate. I mean,
So
you're a wet felting master now.
apparently this is a reference to the fact that Melissa's wet felting technique is icy cold when she gets down in there.
I should have gotten the icy cold hand.
Like icy cold.
Yeah. But
Whereas when I hit the...
you just have this, like, hand power in the wet felting. Okay, anyway,
And heat.
yeah.
All right, so what are you going to say for...
So we've got dragons today. A lot of you were asking about the completed dragon. I did post a picture of her on Instagram, so we'll talk about the dragon. Got a finished sweater. We've got big hot hands. And we're gonna have some fun. I think we might even talk about like
a finished sweater and a dragon.
Yeah, in
all
one
in
episode.
one.
But I think we might have a little conversation about like what it's like to do new things, like
To do
begin
new
again.
stuff.
You know, like to be a beginner.
Can we start with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I walk in the kitchen one day. I'm out there doing something. I come in the kitchen. She's got wool, carded wool laid out on the table in the kitchen, and she's like smushing it.
It's more like merino top, but
She's
yes.
smushing it with her hands, and I'm to assume this is some kind of thing you're supposed to do.
It's like a ritualistic. Like,
You got to know what that
smushing of
was
the wool.
about.
I've never wet felted before, so I didn't know what it was about either.
I didn't even know it was a
But
thing.
he's kind of teasing a little bit because he did buy
I
all the wet
had
felting
a
supplies.
gift when it came to the wet felting. I got up in there, smush, and my side
Would be like
was
really
all
hot.
felted. Her
Yeah.
side was like nothing ever happened.
We were felting dragon wings, and I think we mentioned this on one of the other episodes. It was just amazing. Like he just could like get in there
It came
and like
together pretty good.
yeah. So if you ever need wet felting help, he's your guy.
So we had the wings, and then Melissa
Oh, Millie, hi.
Melissa came through with the rest of the dragon body.
Hang on, I gotta put Millie in her place.
Oh.
Okay, after a Millie interruption.
So Melissa then turned that flat fluff into the dragon.
The dragon. And Spencer named her Puff.
That was just like round one on the names. Is that gonna stick?
I think it might stick.
Is that
I
gonna
think it's
stick?
Puff.
Puff.
Yeah.
Not
so
Puff Daddy, but just
Just
Puff.
Puff. Yeah. So this is the dragon. Y'all wanted to see it in like full, 3-dimension on the video camera. So here she is. She is.
So what was it? What was it like doing something new?
It was fun. It was really. I had never in my life imagined that I would make a dragon. Like it wasn't like.
Oh, come on.
I wasn't like a child. As a child, I was like, someday I will
I'll
felt
craft
a
a
dragon.
dragon.
I'll craft a dragon out of wool. But I just I just saw.
So I got away from me.
I actually just had been getting some stuff from Living Felt for my needle felting, and I saw that I happened to see that there was a class on making a dragon, and I was like, that is perfect. So yeah, I just signed
You
up.
sort of reached out and grabbed you.
Yeah, it was
So you
just,
took the class.
just for fun. And Joyce was
Used
an
the-
amazing teacher. I love really good teachers. I had never felted before. I had barely done any 3D wool felting, like sculpting. And I thought Joyce was just amazing. She just made everything seem very possible.
I've always thought with an intro class.
It wasn't an intro class, though.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
Oh.
It was like intermediate.
Well, forget it.
advanced. But go ahead.
I was going to say with an intro class, which this clearly wasn't, it's always good for the students to walk away with something.
Yeah,
they
that's true.
make a bowl, or they make a dragon, or something like that.
Yeah.
This was more intermediate?
Apparently it was more intermediate. But I think I mentioned on the last episode, I don't really start with stockinette. Like I started with entrelac.
Oh, you just wanted to jump in there.
And I just wanted to, sometimes you just want to jump in because you don't,
Yeah.
and I've heard this from a few of you, especially like when we talk on the Zoom on Saturdays, some of you are like, well, I didn't want to make a scarf, I made a sweater. That was the first thing I made, and it's like, yeah, go for it. So I made a felted dragon.
You're supposed to start with the pot holder and
Yeah,
then go to a,
you're supposed to. I mean, who says that you're supposed to? I don't know.
Well, my shop teacher had us do a spoon first.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you carve one?
Yeah,
What did you
you had to carve a spoon, and then I forget what the next thing was, in a box or something.
We made rockets. Like right away, and like
Wow.
we made like cars that had like CO2 things in the back that ran on a racetrack to like.
Okay.
We had to like design.
Did you go to
them.
one of those special schools or
No,
something?
It was just
Private?
No. We just had a cool shop teacher who wasn't
Good
like about
shop teacher.
making
Spoons. It was a nice spoon. You had nothing against spoon
And
making.
you do like spoon making.
I kind of stayed at that level. That was like as far as I got.
But yeah, it just like jumped in. And it's not perfect. Like I look at it and I'm like, oh, okay. So for example, if you look at the wings, since we had never wet felted before, it has like, yeah, it has hair. It has an armature in the wings. And like I noticed later on that some of the armature with the tape is like sticking out a little bit.
Poking out.
I could fix that. Like you could take this wing back and like wet felt over it really easily and fix it. Now I know that.
Yeah,
and you know, could. But I also like
all dragons have little,
you know, it's like a little bone sticking
traits.
out, you know. That's okay. And you know, the skin I think is a little, I don't know if I like it or not. I kind of want to go back and do scales.
I felt with felting.
I don't know.
Just as a rookie. It's hard to tell when it's happened. You know, it's like
felted.
alchemy or something. It's like when you're kneading bread. Like, when are we at the point when the gluten has really done it? You know, like you're sitting there and... Yeah. But I felt like the wings, they fully felted.
Oh, yeah. And I think, I don't know. I mean, I think that's where you get the expertise, like over years of time, learning, you know, like what it feels like. Yeah. But I feel like you can still do it and it's fine. Like, it might not be that, you know, sure, she's a little fuzzier maybe than if I had... you know, perfectly sat there and like punched at the wool forever until it was, you know, whatever. But like,
just a little more psychotic than you were.
I wasn't psychotic about it. I just kind of, I don't know much about needle felting, but I could still make a dragon, and so could you. You know,
I feel the same way about the barn that I built in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
it's full of imperfections, but it's like none of it bothers me. Like, it's
still cool.
It's great. I like it.
Some people like the imperfections just because it's like a reminder.
Like whatever.
Of, you know, the actual.
It's just great to do it.
Thing. Yeah. So.
You gonna do more felting?
Yeah, I'm gonna do more felting. I'm taking a class on 2-dimensional stuff right now, which is great, and it's she's very painterly about it. So she talks about the kind of like oil paint layer and the watercolor kind of layer and the acrylic layer. It's like it's a really interesting way of thinking about the felting, like 2D felting, because it's like it's very I'm not very artistic, but like it's very artsy.
Let's just take a moment to discuss this phrase that Melissa from Knitting the Stash just babbled. I'm not very artistic. All right, so she's got this sweater she just made. I don't know, it's over here, and she changed the stuff and everything. She made this or whatever, but she's not artistic. Like, I just like what?
I don't know.
So does being artistic in your mind?
I'm very good at
have to come from like.
Yeah, I'm very good at mimetic.
What
stuff.
Is that?
Like copying. Like, I'll take a photo and I can copy it into 2-dimensional needle felting. I can watch somebody else make a dragon.
Kind of like
I can make
Picasso used to do or whatever. Or Monet, and he'd like look at something and he'd, you know, like that kind of thing.
Anyway, I often get rejected. So, like, I've tried to put up pictures on, like, these needle felting groups where I say, like, here's my picture and here's what I did.
And they just
reject it. So it gives me feeling
like... they won't even put it in?
They're like, oh, well, if it doesn't come straight out of your brain or something, it doesn't count. And I don't understand. I mean, that's not...
maybe that's the way people think of art or whatever, being artistic, is that it has to be spontaneously generated creativity or whatever.
I would say I'm a creative person. And I think you would too. Would you say you're artistic? You'd say you're artistic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I would say not artistic, but creative.
I guess. Okay, I felt a little weird saying that. I think I yearn to be, you know, like, and I'm always trying to be more artistic and creative about stuff. That's all right. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think even though I'm giving you a hard time, I think I also feel the same way. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm an artist. Maybe. You know, like, to earn that title would take certain kinds of accomplishments.
It's weird, yeah, because in other parts of life, I feel like you don't have to you don't need like an art degree to be an artist. I don't think it's that way. Yeah. But I feel like you kind of have to see yourself, or like, I don't know, see
have some gallery showings or whatever.
No, I don't know about that even. Yeah. No, it's just like a way of, like, I have friends who are artists who, like, I think about, like, I don't think has Amy ever done like a show? Not so much, but she does all these brilliant children's books. She's like a working artist, and like, I don't know. I don't think you have to be in a gallery to be an artist, but like.
Well, I think this little dude is a work of art.
This guy's pretty cool.
It's cool.
Lady. Puff. And I'll put some pictures in here of the
I think your sweaters are too.
Thank you. I think of them as kind of creative, because...
Maybe you don't think of them as artworks because they come from patterns. They originate from patterns.
Maybe. Yeah, it's like, it's a mimetic thing, right? Like...
Momatic?
Oh boy.
Automatic?
Automatic.
Mimetic.
Yeah.
That's mean copying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
mimicry.
Yeah, mimicking.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
But you were going to make a dragon too.
It's still in the conceptual phase.
Are you gonna do one like this, you think?
No.
No.
Uh-uh.
See, you're just like gonna go out on your own.
I want to just, I've seen this one, so I don't want to mimic it.
You don't want to mimic it.
Mimic it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Probably because that same bogusness about art and stuff.
There we go.
I feel like I gotta do my own thing. Plus, when the big hot hands get up in there,
you never know what's
end up a little bit,
Yeah.
But I think I've got too many things on the RV boiler right now, so it's sort of like hard to get at all the different projects.
We are
I'm trying to knock some stuff off.
We are planning on siding our house.
There's a few projects in the works.
And painting it this summer, plus putting a deck on.
And there's these stupid jobs where you've got to like earn your living and put food on the table and stuff, and they take too much time. I would recommend the job that's like an hour, like once a week, or half an hour, something like that. You just kind of do it, whatever it is.
I've been kind of putting us behind on our house projects because I've been.
She's got this job. It's
writing
ridiculous.
A book. But the introduction is now drafted,
that's
so
how
I'm
it goes.
very close.
You gotta do the job sometimes.
Yeah. So do you want to hear about the dragon? How it worked?
Yeah. I thought we heard about it.
Well,
let's hear about it.
I think the last time everybody saw it, it was just a wire.
Okay, so what's the story?
So the story of the dragon, the story of Puff is that Puff was an armature. It was wire, and then the wire's coated with basically pipe cleaners.
Yeah, just to give it some texture.
It's like the stuff of your childhood comes back around. I never thought.
You're more of a.
I never thought I would use pipe cleaners again.
And the pipe cleaners let the fluff adhere
Stick
to it,
the
whatever.
Wire. Yeah, well, you do floral tape too. For a lot of it for the wings and stuff.
So the next layer is.
Then you start putting on your core wool, which is all. I think I talked about it last time. It's like I had this extra fleece lying around, and I just made bats and bats of wool. And then
just carded it up.
Just put you start putting like the muscles on and the.
So then the dragon was kind of like a big white fluff.
It was kind of weird looking. It had no
albino.
Face. It was weird.
You could put some pictures in here.
I'll put some pictures in here. It had no face.
No, but it was forming. It was nascent.
Yeah. And then you actually do the face, or you attach the wings early on before it has a face, which is kind of weird.
Because they need to dig in deep.
Because they got to dig in deep.
And then you did the face.
Then did the face.
And that was a little eerie, because then it's like this white fluffy thing with this face that hasn't really changed.
No, and I love the face. I feel like it came out really well. That's the one part I feel like with needle felting is like if you can get your faces right, I think it really makes a huge difference.
I feel that way when I get up in the morning. As long as the face is like just moderately okay, the rest can just be trash. Like whatever.
We're not gonna make a t-shirt like that. but I did buy the eyes. Like I didn't make the eyes. I bought the eyes. They're just
like
plastic or glass or something. Yeah. Like just little eyes, but they're kind of dragony. Cat's eyes. And once the face was done, then it was like...
You also did some clay
for
the horns and the took over the oven for a day. Yeah. I was trying to put my pizza in there, and it was like all full of claws. Okay, then what did you do?
Well, we had felted... This is the other big hot hands part. We had felted a piece of pre-felt with all kinds of extra stuff, so like some silk and stuff.
Okay.
And so then once that was all... It was hanging on the refrigerator for like a week, almost like a kid's art project.
It was cool.
It was cool. So it got cut up and then added to the, starting up here all the way down and kind of folded.
Kind of like the neck thing.
Yeah, so you get all like that sense of like the scales on a dragon's belly all the way down. And then the tail and the neck and then the body. So it takes, like, you don't ever get this top coat is like the last thing you do. And that was cool to figure out. Like I thought, we'll be like making, blobs for the arms or whatever. But it was like literally build it up from the inside out, and then the last thing you put on is the skin at the very end.
It sounds almost like cake making where you put the fondant on there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dragon cake.
Too bad there's not
next
cake in
week
there.
On knitting the cake.
Yeah. So then that's it, and it's big, and it's light, and it's made out of wool, and that's just really cool.
Yeah, kind of like the sweater you made.
Oh yeah.
Big, light, and made out of wool.
There you go. I never thought I'd do this, but I did, and now I'm gonna do more.
How big of a thing is felting animals and stuff?
I don't actually know.
Like, are there a lot of people doing it? You see them on Insta whatever it's called? Instacart?
I feel like there are definitely people doing like little felted projects, like ornaments and, you know, like little gnomes or little cutie things. I think there are some people, like I know Megan Neds from the, is it the Woolen Wagon? I interviewed her back on the blog a long time ago. She does all the beautiful, like, felting, like realistic felting animals, like bears and dogs and giraffes. And...
But if you go to, like, Joanne Fabric, they have a little felting supply thing? Like, is it big enough they would have a section?
I don't know. I went in and bought some more wire, but that was in the jewelry making section. I don't think it's, like, a big craft yet. Like mainstream craft. It's gonna be big after this. We're gonna see this dragon and be like, oh, I want my own dragon. So yeah, I don't think it's that. I mean, there are books out there. There are plenty of like artists who have. A lot of times, artists will have transitioned over from working in like paint or some other medium. There's this one woman who does those beautiful, huge portraits that I showed you, the wet felting.
Right.
And then needle felts on top of them. I can't remember her name right now.
They're pretty awesome.
She has a class on portraiture in black and white, which is also amazing.
So people are into it.
People are into it, but it's not like a mainstream thing, I don't think.
Yeah, you know.
But maybe someday.
How many crafts are mainstream? Aren't crafts at the margins these days? Everyone just works and watches Netflix and that's like it.
Pretty much. They're gardening. Is gardening a craft? We're getting into some
It is pretty big though.
Issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is Puff. This is Big Hot Hands.
Are you going to talk about the sweater next?
Yeah, I'll talk about the
Thanks for letting me help you out with the dragon.
Thank you for your big hot hands.
Hey man.
I appreciate it.
Always happy to heat it up.
You going to take Puff with you?
Yeah, I'll take Puff.
Bye, Puff.
I don't even know what noise dragons make.
So as promised, I have one other finished object for you this week. This is the Copenhagen Cardigan by PetiteKnit. And I think the last time you saw it, it was like the bolero stage, basically. Like just up here, I maybe had just split for the sleeves at that point. So it is finished. I literally just finished it like 10 minutes ago. I gave it a quick steam just so that it would like sit a little nicer on the mannequin. But it definitely needs a wet bath with all the mohair and whatnot. So the steamer actually made it flare a little bit in the back. You can see that just along the hemline. So I'm gonna give it a good wet wash and block. But I love it. I think it is, it's a really simple kind of like staple piece. That's what my hope is, at least. I had a white cardigan and a black cardigan that I used to wear to work all the time. And both of them just pooped out at some point, so I needed a new cardigan, so that's one of the reasons that this was on the needles. It's super simple, top-down construction, integrated button bands, which some people like and some people don't like, so note to yourself if you're thinking about making this pattern. The button band is integrated. Tiny little buttonholes too, which makes sense proportionally with the way the sweater looks. So I picked out some tiny little white pearly buttons, and Spencer's gonna sew them on for me because he's so nice. He promised me it would take all of like 10 minutes because he's a very fast button sewer on her. So the buttons will go over here. This is where the button holes are. I was keeping track of them because since you're doing the integrated button band, you want to make sure that you remember to put your buttonholes in every so many rows. I was, of course, out of gauge, so I was adding rows because, yeah, they needed to be... I was going more by the spacing between the buttons, which I think is about 2 inches. So that's one of the things I do. I think I've talked about this on here before, is if I'm out of gauge and I'm trying to replicate the proportion of the pattern, and I can't go by the row count, you know, if the person gives you a row count for number of rows to go between buttonholes or something like that, you take the gauge of the pattern, you figure out what it is for rows per inch, and then you figure out how many rows they're requiring between buttonholes, so that you can calculate using sweater math the basic like distance that they're thinking. So if their gauge is 24 rows for every 4 inches, then you know that it's 6 rows an inch. And if they require you to do 12 rows between buttonholes, then they're assuming that there's going to be about a 2-inch gap between those buttonholes. So then you can use that number to recalculate based on your own row gauge. Little proportional sweater math for anybody who hasn't thought about it, but just like a little tip there. So that's what I often do if I'm working at a gauge. Otherwise, I think I modified this by making it longer than she calls for in the pattern. I did not add the front pockets. This is a cardigan that has optional front pockets that you can add at the end. One of the things I was wondering about was how it would actually fit closed, because I'm not really into like a tight sweater set cardigan, kind of like, this isn't like the 1950s or 60s in my mind, so I'm not into that so much. So I didn't end up doing the split hem on the sides like I normally would, because I thought, well, it's a cardigan, and oftentimes when I wear cardigans, at the bottom I'll pretty much do like the last button and not do the other buttons. Millie, you gotta find a place, sweetie. I just went with it. It seems like it's actually gonna fit really well. I put it on and kind of like pulled this around my body, and it felt just great. So I was pretty happy with it. The arms, I ended up, they look a little wide to me, and I think they are a little bit wide, in part because I added the extra inch of stitches under the arm. And that's cool because I like to wear shirts underneath my cardigan, oftentimes button-up shirts and things like that. So it's nice to have a little bit of extra room. I ended up tapering down. Again, I adjusted gauge for the decreases, and I ended up tapering down here at the end, doing my decreases a little bit faster. Sometimes I used to see this more in older patterns from like maybe like the early 2000s, where there would be a kind of differential between the decreases at the top and then the decreases at the bottom, which makes sense because your arm is bigger up here usually than it is down here, right? So you want to leave a little more room here to the elbow, even past the elbow. And then, you know, for a lot of us, our wrists are still pretty small. So we want to do more of our decreases in this second part of the sleeve. So I kind of went with that model and did more of my decreases down here. Yeah, and I still have, if you're wondering, I still have my little forgotten stitch up here that I need to fix. So I will go back in now and fix that. I will make sure I've woven in all my ends. I think I've already done that. There might be one in the armpit somewhere. And then I'm going to give it a good wash and block. I did end up liking this fabric. It was a little stiff to work, I found, because to get close to gauge, I ended up working on size 3, US 3 needles, which I think is like 3.25 millimeter, something like that. And when you're holding a fingering weight yarn and a piece of mohair together, you end up with a little bit of it's a little bit thick for a US size 3 needle. So yeah, I would say sometimes when you work with a thicker yarn on a thinner needle, it can kind of like cause some hand pain. And I did notice that as I was like getting toward the end of this sweater, like my hands were a little bit stiffer than they normally are when I'm knitting. And I think it was just because of the density of the fabric. It ended up being a pretty lightweight sweater anyway, because the yarn was a woolen spun yarn and the mohair is very light. So it's not a heavy sweater, it's just a little bit dense, which is actually kind of cool. For around here, it's cold. I put on a cardigan, I want to actually be warm. It's not like a little wispy cardigan. So I think that actually works out pretty well. The other thing I was curious about with this cardigan that ended up working out is the crew neck. So I think I mentioned this last week. A lot of cardigans either have this kind of neck, which looks to me pretty high. You know, it looks like it's going to hit right here on the collarbone. Or they're like a V-neck, which comes all the way down. There's not really an in-between where there's a kind of like a little bit of a lower, like maybe a ballet neck or a boat neck might be a kind of nice way to do this. But a lot of the cardigans I was looking at had this kind of neckline, and I was very curious whether or not it was going to hit me a little too high, despite the short rows in the back. But it's perfect. I'll try to put some photos in here. Actually, I won't, because I'm going to be washing it, so I don't think I'll be wearing it. Yeah, so I won't be able to put photos in here, but I'll put them up on Instagram and on the Ravelry page. But it sits just right. It's actually quite nice, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. One of those things where you're like, it's a top-down sweater. I'm starting with the very thing that I'm not sure of, and then we're just going to go for it. So once we reached the sleeve separation stage, I did try it on, and it was pretty much right on in terms of where it hit me on just below the collarbone. So I was pretty happy with that. But yeah, it's a pretty simple sweater. It's kind of unusual in that it doesn't have there's no cables, there's no lace, there's no fanciness, there's no, anything particularly special about it, except that it's just a good quality pattern, kind of a classic silhouette. So I'm happy to add it to my wardrobe. I think I've been knitting a few more sweaters like that lately, and my poor mannequin is like, wants to be spun the other way. She's like, spin me the right way. I feel like I've been knitting a few more sweaters that are like this, just a little bit more simple lines, classic kind of thing. Maybe because I'm actually thinking about how I wear them, and some of the really fun ones are fun to make. I would totally encourage you to make them, but they don't always work out in terms of like daily wear. So this is definitely a daily wear kind of item. Yeah, so that's the Copenhagen cardigan. I'm happy with it. I'm looking forward to giving it a bath, because I think if the steamer is any indication, the whole thing is going to relax really nicely. It does have a tubular bind up, but I want to see how that reacts to the water and the rest of the sweater kind of relaxing. So I'll keep you up to date. And just a couple announcements at the end here. I have been washing the Shorn yarn. You might have seen that on Instagram. We have 3 different colors this year. So there's a beautiful natural brown, there is a white, and there is a gray. And we have 2 patterns, thanks to Erika Fields, who has been working behind the scenes, creating these beautiful patterns for Shorn. I think we have enough test knitters for the Mobius cowl, but we do need potentially a couple more test knitters for the shawl. You can see images of it over on Ravelry. There's a thread about the test knit with links to the images, and I believe Erika has also shared some of those images on Instagram, so you can check them out. We would love to have, you know, another shawl test knitter. You can get in touch with me. I can put you in touch with Erika if you're interested in test knitting for the new Shorn patterns. Those should be out in the fall along with the yarn, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to get this yarn out into your hands. I will send a newsletter out when it becomes available, and as we get closer and closer. So if you want to be on that newsletter list, you can go over to knittingthestash.com and sign up to be on the list. That way you'll know when Shorn is out and when these 2 new patterns are out. It should be pretty exciting launch for the fall. So yay! Yeah. Other announcements: the skein of picked wool went to a wonderful recipient, and I'm just pulling up. It went to, I like this name, Moira E. Nitu. It sounds awesome, on Ravelry. Durrani. So congratulations, Durrani, on winning the skein of yarn. I will get that shipped out to you. And yeah, a thank you to the podcast producers, as always: Lenore, Jennifer, Rose, Erika, Nargis, and Kendra. Thanks for supporting the podcast, making this all possible. And yeah, I will see you next time. Probably not with a dragon, but I will dream up something else just to keep you all occupied and entertained. I'll see you later. Bye.